esteemed students. My name is Dr. Morilat Afolabi from Faculty of Education, Science Education Department. The topic for today is methods and resources for teaching integrated science from your interesting course, EDU754 Integrated Science Methods. Let's begin.
In today's lesson, we are going to look into methods of teaching integrated science. Methods of teaching are the approaches or means adopted by the teachers to carry out the functions of instructions. There are many methods in practice which the integrated science teacher can apply to deliver instruction to early learners. Such methods like lecture method, demonstration method, discussion method, project method, discovery method, laboratory method, and investigative method. But for integrated science, the best method is supposed to be student-centered method because you are teaching junior secondary school and primary school students. So the method you are going to use must be student-centered, where the teacher's primary role is to coach and facilitate student learning. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to outline some methods appropriate for teaching basic science and technology, explain the activities involved in each method, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the teaching methods, and list factors to be considered in choosing methods for teaching, and examine the use of ICT as a teaching tool. The first method we are going to consider is discovery method. Discovery method is the teaching in which learners try to find out things by themselves. What do we mean by that? Students will be given a problem to go and solve by themselves. Students are led by skillful, thought-provoking questions by the teacher in order for them to discover facts for themselves. Students are given opportunities to gather information, facts, and ideas and to process them by themselves in order to find out solutions and draw conclusions from them. In that case, the student will be given a problem to go and solve, and by solving that problem by themselves, they'll be able to discover some facts, they'll gather information, they'll gather ideas, and they'll process those ideas by themselves to find solution to that particular problem. Students are provided with the opportunities to investigate a problem, search for possible solutions, make observations, ask questions, test out ideas, think creatively, and use their intuition. Discovery methods has a lot of things to know. Discovery method is a structured and unstructured exploration in laboratory. That is, you can take students to the laboratory and let them go and explore whatever you want them to know in the laboratory. It can be a structured exploration or it can be unstructured. It depends on the problem you pose to them. Students, through their mental processes such as observation, measuring, classifying, hypothesizing, can draw conclusions from data that has been gathered and analyzed. When they observe things in the laboratory, they'll be able to gather information, they'll gather data, and that data they can now analyze it to get the solution to the problem. Discovery learning takes place in problem-solving situations where the learner draws on his own experience and prior knowledge. That is, what he has known before, he will now develop on it to find solution to the problem. It is a method of instruction through which students interact with their environment by exploring and manipulating objects, wrestling with questions and controversies. There are methods of teaching, like we have said, and most of these methods have their advantages, and that is why we are using it to teach the primary school students or pupils and the junior secondary school students. Some of the advantages of discovery method: the learner develops the spirit of inquiry into things around them. They want to go and discover, they want to inquire, so they have that spirit of going to inquire about something around them. It makes learner to learn and develop his thinking ability. When solving problem, of course, you have to think critically so that you know how to solve the problem. It develops inquiry attitudes in the learner because they want to find out, to be asking questions, inquiring about something. So it will change their attitudes as a learner to be able to inquire even in future. It makes learner happy and intrinsically motivated when he finds out and discovers knowledge for himself. It makes learner to be the owner of his knowledge. When he finds out something, he becomes the owner of that knowledge. But we have other advantages like it makes learning real, it enhances retention, it makes students to be able to recall, because what you do by yourself, you'll be able to recall and transfer knowledge of what you have learned. Learning is student-centered in discovery method and inculcates manipulative skills in the learner. The learner tends to have greater confidence in himself and accomplishing investigation. It also allows adequate pupils material interaction. The student now interact with the materials because you have left him alone to discover. Now, there are no method that has its own advantage without disadvantages. So the discovery method has its own disadvantages too, and among the disadvantages is that it's slow and time consuming. Of course, if you give students 2 weeks to go and find out something that you can teach within a period in your classroom, then you should be sure that you are slowing down the time, and it will consume more time. It is difficult to manage for a large class. If you have a large class and you ask them to go and discover things by themselves, you discover that you have to do a lot of work to be able to arrange them, and it is cost intensive. You make them to go out to spend money to find out. So apart from this discovery method, we have discussion method. It's another good method that you can use in primary school and in junior secondary school. Like a discussion method, we said this is also learner centered. It is anchored on the principle of self construction of knowledge. The students on their own, you give them a topic, they will discuss it within themselves so that they can bring out ideas from different opinions of the students. The learner is the owner of his own knowledge. So he brings out his own knowledge, the other one brings his own, so they bring them together and it will become a whole. The teacher role is to facilitate. In discussion method, just look at the students, where they are making mistakes, you make corrections. The teacher moderates learning process. The teacher acts as a catalyst to set the learner thinking and reflecting. What do we mean by that? That is, if they are going wrong somewhere, you'll be able to add or to correct them so that the discussion method, you speed it up instead of slowing it down. As a teacher, you catalyze it and make it to work faster. Then the teacher helps the learner to build on the prior knowledge. The teacher also motivates them to reason more. Then we have advantages of this method. Why do we use it for this student, for the primary school student pupils and the junior secondary school students? It is because it is useful in motivating student activity. It makes students to come to the class and feel like saying something. Let me contribute my own quota to the knowledge. It develops positive interpersonal relationship between the students. Then it involves student active participation. It builds confidence in the learner. Then it has its own disadvantages too. Discussion method has disadvantages because it does not allow for easy coverage of syllabus. When you have students to say something, to discuss, they waste your time, and Most importantly, what you are supposed to cover within the shortest time, you discover that you're now going to take a longer time, which means the delay will now make you not to cover what is in the syllabus. All topics cannot be handled through discussion method. It's not every topic in your syllabus that you can use discussion method to teach. The attention of students may wane if it lasts long. That is, when you are discussing something and the students are not paying attention because of the long period of discussion, that is a problem. Then it is time consuming. Another method is a project method. In this method, you give your student topic, like in discovery method too. You give them topic, or they give themselves topic to go and find out. And project method requires originality from the student. That is, it is them, the student themselves, that you go and find out, and whatever you get from them is the original that is from them. It's not that they get it from somewhere. It's what they discovered or they develop as a student that they will bring to you in the class. The student generates their own problem, or the teacher provides them with problems. Most projects are contained in the curriculum and in the textbook. That is, the project you are going to give them to develop is going to be part of the curriculum. It's not outside their topics. It's not outside the syllabus. So you give them topics from the syllabus and they will now go out to find out. It is student-centered approach that involves the dynamic classroom approach. Students acquire a deeper knowledge through active exploration of real-world challenges and problems. Project method also makes students learn about a subject by working for an extended period of time to investigate. Students respond to complex questions, challenges, and problems in project method. It integrates knowing and doing. That is, when they are going out to find out, to investigate a particular concept, they will know, and they know by doing. It allows the student to solve problems with a little teacher direction. The teacher is seen more as a facilitator in project method, like that of discovery method. The advantages of these projects are students are actively involved because they are the one finding out. It encourages learning by doing. Project method is child-centered and progressive education. Students solve problems with a little or no teacher direction. It brings about cooperation and collaboration among students to solve the problems. Then it has its own disadvantages too. It is time consuming. Of course, when you have students to go out and find out, they waste time, and it's time consuming, and it is not cost friendly. So you have to spend money before the student can bring out something from their project method. Now we have another method as laboratory method. This is a very fantastic and good method because here the teacher himself is going to support the student to find out something or about a particular concept. It's an activity-packed method for individual or group of students. It is targeted at making personal observations of procedures or processes, products, and events. There are laboratory exercises and experiments. The laboratory exercises involve activities carried out in order to provide practice in designing, operating, and interpreting experiments. The experiments are procedures used for the purposes of testing hypotheses, confirming what is known, and discovering new things. That is, in the laboratory, you make them to find out things, to discover new things, and whatever they discover at this point, it becomes their knowledge too, because when they see, they believe. And that is why we said most of these methods are used for primary and junior secondary school students because they are the methods that are student-centered. Well, laboratory method also has advantages. It leads to better retention. That is, what they see, they remember. And it makes learning them to have better retention, because they will retain whatever they must have learned. Students can recall scientific information easily. Seeing is believing. When they see, they recall easily. It aids memory, and it engenders positive attitudes towards science by the student. It makes them to be happy that they are scientists, and their attitude will be changed towards science. Disadvantages of laboratory method also includes it is also expensive, as equipment and apparatus must be bought before the experiment. Before you ask them to carry out any experiment in the laboratory, you have to buy the equipment that is required, and these equipment are very expensive, and the apparatus they are going to use, even reagent chemicals, are very, very expensive. And experiments are delicate and dangerous. We all know that, because we have toxic materials, toxic chemicals in the laboratory. When the student, because they are junior secondary school students, and they are very young, when you expose them to this type of danger, you know it has to be one of the disadvantages of this method. It may lead to accident in the laboratory. We have field trip. Field trip is just taking out students from the school to somewhere around the school for some topics that you cannot teach. You cannot ordinarily teach in the classroom. The student have to be taken out of the school for this for the purpose of these academic educational purposes. It is an act of taking students outside the classroom. We have said it. It is used for purpose of making observation and obtain specific information from original or natural conditions. Supposing you want to teach something like a pond, you want to teach animals in the pond, or animals in a water around your school, and you know you cannot bring water or pond into your classroom, so you take them out to go and see that, and they see them in their natural condition. It brings the learner close to real life situation and creates positive attitudes towards science. It helps to create positive attitudes, like we have said, in the student, and it involves many of the senses and helps to create keen interest in the learner. It encourages team spirit and can be used in discussion group. The student will be taken out of the school, and they will now have to learn within themselves, and even they learn from the people or the place you are taking them to. Advantages of this field trip: it helps to create positive attitude. We have said that. It gives learners first-hand information. Instead of telling them what they have not seen in theory, when they get there, they see it as first-hand information about something in their environment. Activities which cannot be carried out in the classroom, if possible, is possible outside, because like you cannot bring a big machine or equipment into the laboratory, but you can take them out to an industry where they can see the machine or equipment, and you can use it to teach them. It makes students develop interest in some professions. When they, let's say you take them to Coca-Cola industry and they see how engineers are working on the equipment, they want to become an engineer. So it makes them to have positive attitudes, and it makes them to have interest in some professions. It involves many of the senses. We have said that, because they will see, they will hear, they will touch, and it helps them to learn. It builds student and teacher-student relationship, which brings out this team spirit and cooperation. The disadvantages of a field trip too is there. It is difficult to plan, because before you can ask students to go out for excursion or field trip, you have to take permission from the school, you take permission from the parents, you look for money, you look for transport, you do a lot of things, which means you have to plan. So it is always difficult to plan and execute. It is expensive, because you spend money to take them out. It is time consuming, because it can't be one day exercise. If you want to do it, you travel to somewhere, you bring them back, and it cannot be within the shortest time. This is the fear and danger. There is the fear and danger of accident. Suppose you are taking somebody's child out of the school and there's accident on the road, it is danger. It's one of the disadvantages of a field trip. Now, before you can select a method, it is very, very important to know the criteria you are supposed to use. We have so many methods, we have said it. Of course, from the student, the type of student we are going to teach now, we have eliminated some methods. We have eliminated lecture method because you cannot use lecture method in the primary school. You cannot use lecture method in a junior secondary school. But before you can use any of the methods, you have to think of some things. What are these things? The age of the learner. The student you are going to teach, what is their age? If you use a particular method, is it going to fit the concept you are going to teach them with the age? So you need to know the age of the student before you can choose the topic. Then, because both the physical and mental development of the learner must be considered in selecting the method for teaching. The topic to be taught, you need to think about it before you can. You cannot say you want to go for field trip. You have a concept like filtration, and which you can easily demonstrate in the classroom, and you now say you are going to take them outside. No, the topic you are going to teach, you have to consider it too, to know the type of method you are going to use. Another criteria you have to know is a competency of the teacher. The teacher must select method he can easily and effectively handle. If you know that you cannot use a particular method effectively as a teacher, you don't need to use it. Use the method that you know will fit the age of the student and the topic and the one you are conversant with, and you can teach effectively. The size of the class too is another factor that you have to consider in choosing your method. The size of the class is very essential in choice of method to use, because if you have a large class, there are some methods that you cannot be used. If you have a small class, there are methods that you cannot use. We have also resources available. If you have resources available for experiments, of course you will be glad to use a laboratory method because the resources are there. But if the resources are not there and this is a topic you are supposed to use, you cannot use that topic for laboratory method. The time for the teaching too is another criteria you have to consider, because the time on the timetable will help you to choose the method you are going to use for teaching. So now you have known all the things that are required of you to teach with a particular methods in primary school and junior secondary school integrated science. Then the use of ICT, information communication technology, in teaching of basic science and technology. As stated in National Policy on Education in 2009, the government proposed that integration of ICT into education in Nigeria begins from primary school in the teaching of basic science and technology. So now the government proposed this, and we need to look into it. Much emphasis was placed on the use of ICT in the teaching of basic science and technology. It is the wish of the federal government of Nigeria that ICT skills be incorporated in primary school. And the ICT is not only a learning tool but also a teaching tool and teaching method. When you use it for the student to learn, then you are going to use it as a teacher, as teaching tool, and it is going to still be a method of teaching. It is rich environment, support student learning in science in schools. The role of ICT in school. ICT promotes cognitive acceleration, enabling a wider range of experience, increases students in self-management, because on their own they can get a laptop and work on a particular concept. It facilitates data collection and presentation. ICT provide environment for integration of school subjects and is used to teach all school subjects. In teaching process, ICT helps in solving many educational programs. It can be used for tutorials, it can also be used for simulation, it can be used for drilling. It is very useful in handling large classes because if you have a large class and you give a topic and you have a computer, the student will be working on their own. So it is used for large class. The role of ICT in the 21st century teacher education is inevitable for usability of it in the teaching and learning process. So now we have come to the end of this topic. In this lesson, we have discussed the general methods of teaching basic science and technology, the advantages and disadvantages of the method, the use of ICT as a teaching tool and as a method of teaching. So it is expected of you now to go and find out more about what you can do, the activities that is required to make you be a good teacher. For your assignment, you take a topic from your basic science and technology syllabus or scheme of work, list your instructional objectives, and select teaching methods that are effectively help you to achieve the stated objectives. Justify your selection. The selection of the topic. We have references here for you to be able to read further. So thank you for your attention.